Ok, bienvenue, welcome to everybody, bienvenue à tout le monde ici avec la Maison du Whisky et avec James Wills de Kilchoman, de la distillerie Kilchoman pour cette petite dégustation bien sympathique sur la Family Cask. Welcome James, thanks to sharing the time with us, merci de partager le temps avec nous. Juste pour vous parler, Kilchoman avec la Maison du Whisky, c'est une longue histoire d'amour déjà, et on est très très fiers d'avoir pu dès les premiers instants dénicher ce véritable petit joyau et travailler avec James. I was just saying that how la Maison du Whisky is proud to at that time from the beginning find this little jewel that is Kilchoman Distillery, and since then it's a long love story, I guess, and so we're really proud. Comment va se passer la dégustation? En fait, James, dans un premier temps, va présenter la distillerie et le projet du Family Cask. Et puis, ensuite, je découvrirai avec vous les samples et nous allons procéder à la dégustation. Voilà. Alors, pour ceux qui ne sont pas à l'aise avec l'anglais, je vous rassure, il y aura une petite traduction sommaire via le chat. Et via ce même chat, s'il vous plaît, n'hésitez pas à poser vos questions. Okay? Just James, I introduce how we will lead this tasting by first your turn to presenting the Kilchoman Distillery and the project of the Family Cask. And then we're gonna open the session of tasting. Okay, James?
Okay.
Okay. All right. It's up to you.
So, yeah, in terms of Kilchoman, Kilchoman is a relatively new distillery. Many people are aware of us and what we do, but perhaps we aren't as well known as some of the other Islay distilleries because we only started in 2005. So my father built Kilchoman from completely new. So there was no existing buildings, there was no old distillery. It was completely new. And so all of the equipment is new, and he could take a kind of new approach to the old fashioned ways of making whiskey. And he always had the intention to build a distillery that was traditional in terms of, the way that we distill, but approach the whiskey making process in a slightly different way. And he wanted to build a farm distillery, so a distillery that did the whole process on site, from growing the barley to malting, distilling, maturing, and bottling. And that was the idea he had in his head when he came to build Kilchoman. And that's what we do. The whiskey we make is from our own barley, is always referred to as 100% Islay. So of the 5 whiskies, we have 2 100% Islay whiskies. And then the others in the range are made from our malted barley that we buy in. But the difference is also barley source, but also how smoky the barley is. So for the 100% Islay whiskies, they are lightly peated. And then the other whiskies that we produce, so my father's cask and Maccaday, which people might be familiar with, these are peated, they're 50 ppm, so they're heavily peated. So that is the key difference with the 2 styles of Kilchoman. Do you want to do a translation as we go, or would you rather I just continue and then?
Oh, you can go. There's someone to care about the translation. Thanks, James.
So we are also the smallest distillery on Islay. We produce at the moment about 400,000 litres, which is a lot of whiskey. It's not a small distillery, but we are the smallest on the island. And if you compare us to other distilleries, most are making at least 1 million litres compared to our 400,000. And the biggest on Islay, Kilila produces about 6 or 7 million litres of alcohol every year. So we're very much smaller, but very focused in our approach. So we only make whiskey for single malt. So we do not sell any for independent bottling or for blending. We only produce at the moment for our own needs to sell, as Kilchoman single malt. which is quite different. There are other distilleries taking that approach, but it is quite rare in the whiskey industry.
Indeed.
And the style of whiskey that we produce is very much an Islay style of whiskey. You know, it's peaty, but with Kilchoman, we try, and with the fermentation, with the distillation and the casks that we choose, we try and balance the smoky flavor of the whiskey with light, fruity character, so that it's not, you know, Kilchoman is not all about smoke. It's also about, you know, other character that comes in, you know, from the distillation. It's a lot of citrus sweetness. And then with the different casks, we can add some red fruits with maybe a port cask, some caramel, vanilla with a bourbon cask. So we come from the foundation of peat smoke and citrus. That's really the classic style of Kilchoman. And in terms of the whiskies that we have to taste today, this is a series of casks that we have put together or created. It sort of, I guess it originates from my family, but it has also been a collaboration with La Maison du Whisky, you know, in terms of we have 5 casks, 5 members of my family, all who work at Kilchoman. My father is, well, he thinks he's in charge, but my mother is really the one in charge when it comes to the important things. But he's very much the man who creates the whiskey. So he and my mother are based on Islay full time. They live there. They've lived there since I think 2003. But my mother's family is actually from Islay originally. So they've selected 1 cask each, and then me and my 2 brothers, we have also selected 1 cask each. So 5 casks for the 5 members of my family, and each has a personal sort of tasting notes on the back of the label on the carton to give their impressions of the cask and the reasons why they selected it. And yeah, it's to show a full spectrum of the cask types of flavors that we have at Kilchoman. So bourbon barrels, lightly peated, heavily peated, sherry matured, and a port matured as well. So quite different flavors.
James, just already one question. You mentioned that Kilchoman is the smallest distillery on Islay. Even with the new one with the Ardnoy on the up north, is it bigger than you there?
I believe they're producing about 10-20% more than we are. I believe
okay.
So. I might not be correct there, but I believe that when I visited that they were producing more than we were. But,
okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Size is not, I mean, size is one thing. Approach to whiskey is
production.
So,
sure. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, please.
So yeah, my father, he selected the oldest cask in the lineup. My mother has selected something which is close to her heart, and then, you know, me and my 2 brothers, we went through the warehouse and we selected 1 cask each as well. And we sort of narrowed down the selection, and we put this to Thierry and the La Maison team, and between the 2 of us, we narrowed down to these 5 casks, which, as I say, represent the spectrum of flavors at Kilchoman.
I have one question. Can we consider that each cask is the reflect of the personality of each member of the family?
No, I don't think that's true, because you know, I think my father's cask would maybe be a bit more fiery if that were the case.
Okay, so
yeah.
Knowing Anthony, yeah, I know what you mean.
Maybe just a little bit, yeah. So I think there's an element of sort of hierarchy, if you like, to the way that it's selected. With my father's being the oldest and maybe the you know, the rarest in some ways, and then it's come down, and mine actually is the youngest, but in my opinion is a very fine cask, the best of all, maybe.
I guess I will get the same answer from each member of the family.
Yeah, perhaps.
Okay. No.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we proceed? Do you have something to add? Sorry, James, if you have
no, I have nothing to add.
Okay. So now I just invite the people to open the box, as I do. Oops. And so start to not miss the first one will be the oldest one, as you say.
Yeah. So shall I tell people a little bit about this, or?
Pardon?
Would you like me to tell people a bit about this, or would you like to introduce which one?
No, please. Yeah. You lead it.
Yeah. So this is my father's selection. So the first one we will taste is the bourbon barrel 14-year-old. That is correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, the reason my father would have selected this is because he makes no secret about the cask type that he feels Kilchoman is best suited to. Whenever he has been asked, how does he feel, which cask type suits Kilchoman the best, he always has said bourbon barrels. And I think he says that, and he has chosen this cask because he feels the Kilchoman character, when maturing in bourbon barrels, there is some harmony. The bourbon is a relatively light influence on the whiskey, and so it allows for the Kilchoman character to shine through. Whereas maybe something like a sherry cask or a port cask or any wine cask, in some ways, the battle between the distillery characteristics and the cask is, you can have a situation where the cask overtakes the whiskey in terms of the flavor that comes through. So with this being a bourbon barrel, there was no surprise for me when he selected a bourbon barrel. And this is one of the very first barrels that we filled at Kilchoman. So the cask number is 30, the 30th barrel filled in 2006. So I believe we only filled less than 15 barrels in 2005. And so this is one of the first 50 barrels ever to be filled at Kilchoman. So quite significant.
Yeah, sure.
It's not the first barrel, but it's also, certainly one of the maybe more collectible or more significant casks. And this, I don't know exactly where the bourbon was that this cask came from, the bourbon producer. But in those days, we were buying from Speyside Cooperage. So we were getting different bourbon casks, but on the nose, lots of sort of tropical fruits, light caramel, citrus flavor, very little peat smoke, which is quite typical of Kilchoman matured in bourbon barrels. You don't often get a lot of peat smoke on the nose. It tends to come through more on the palate.
But what I like mainly about this kind of maturation, and I personally think that bourbon fits very, very well to Kilchoman. But here, just showing that peat never overwhelm the fruity aromas, and it's a perfect balance between fruity and peat. Actually, well, sometimes we go too far in the peatiness, and so but Kilchoman is a perfect balance.
No, I agree completely, and that was exactly what my father and Dr. Jim Swan, who my father worked with in the setting up of our stills. They were absolutely looking for a distinctly peaty whiskey, but something that didn't go so far as to be, medicinal or too earthy, where the more delicate character, aroma, couldn't play a part in the whiskey. And so with this, you have that that a lot of the sort of elegant fruitiness on the nose, and then on the palate you have the sort of power, if you like, of an Islay whiskey coming through with the smoke, with the maritime influence, but it still has real subtlety as well, and the citrus comes through. But the peat really hits you on the palate. On the nose, it's really quite a refined style.
Yeah.
On the palate. Yeah. So my mother, she immediately said that she wanted to select a 100% Islay cask. So my mother's sort of history and association with Islay goes back a long way, much more so than my father, who comes from England. So she wanted to select a 100% Islay. The 100% Islay whiskies that we produce are from the barley that we grow. So she being from Islay and the barley being grown on Islay, she felt that was a good association. And this is a 10-year-old whiskey which is matured in a bourbon barrel. And again, it's a good opportunity to show off Kilchoman in a bourbon barrel and show off the spirit, the sort of more delicate sides of the spirit. It also gives the opportunity to compare the heavily peated barley matured in bourbon barrels, that was my father's cask, with the lightly peated barley that we grow ourselves, also matured in a bourbon cask. So these first two whiskies, they are a direct comparison of the two styles that we produce at Kilchoman. With my father's, it's slightly heavier, slightly more of a distinctly Islay style. With the 100% Islay cask that my mother selected, there's a lot more subtlety. There's even more sweetness, really, and quite malty sweetness for me.
Yes, and very fresh. It's so fresh on the nose. That's incredible, and almost like you said malty, and for me it's almost like milky, something like that. But due to cereals.
I think with it being us always talking about sort of the farm with this, and people often get like a lot of those kind of fresh hay kind of all of those kind of things. I think it gets their brain going on the farm side.
So lovely.
But yeah, very, very fresh, floral, almost like perfumed sometimes.
That's right.
And similar on the palate. The peat smoke doesn't come through so much because it's less smoky, less peaty barley. But the bourbon barrel just allows for all of that Kilchoman, citrus sweetness, caramel, vanilla, butterscotch, all of those typical flavors you associate with bourbon barrel maturation. But it's all married together very, very nicely.
Yeah, it's very lightful. Some spices also, spicier than the previous one.
Yeah. I think with the peat smoke, it's sometimes, people love peat smoke, but it sometimes it masks some of the more subtle flavors. So with this, you can really appreciate the Kilchoman distillate, because the peat isn't pushing that away too much. And so there's a 10-year-old, so it would have been 2010 or 2009 maybe barley harvest. And at that time we were growing, I think it was probably Octavia or Concerto, or potentially both barley varieties, which these varieties, they particularly Octavia and Concerto, they really lend themselves to producing a light spirit. Concerto is a barley variety that we've grown a lot in the last 10 years. And that is because it performs very well in the field, so it grows well on Islay with the challenges of the wind, and the soil is very good quality, but the elements in terms of wind and rain can be challenging. So the Concerto barley handles that very well, and it also malts well and produces this lovely floral citrus style of spirit.
And James, concerning the barley from the farm, from Kilchoman, since the beginning, are you still using the same kind of barley?
No, we've changed the barley varieties quite a bit. We've probably grown over the 15 years that we've been growing the barley. We've maybe grown 8 or 10 different barley varieties.
Oh, I see.
Some of those have been grown, 3 or 4 years in a row. So Publican was a barley variety that we grew a lot in the early years. Octavia, Chalice. In more recent years, Concerto has been the real sort of main one that we've grown. But we've also grown Laureate and Diablo, Sassy. So all of these different varieties. Some of them produce a very, very different spirit. And some of them are only slightly sort of, abnormal, if you like. Laureate is one which we grew recently, which is very, very malty and heavy. We appreciated the difference, but it's not necessarily what we were going for. So we've stopped growing Laureate, and we're growing Concerto again this year, and Diablo. We've just finished the barley harvest on Sunday.
Okay. Wow, this is fantastic also.
Yeah.
And so start strong, but even now in the finish, the back palate is very light and still refreshing. That's very, very nice.
And I mean, the palate is good, but the nose for me is absolutely...
Yeah, as you said, it's a perfume.
Yeah.
It's perfume. Well, I would say dangerously drinkable,
Yeah. No, so we haven't sort of experimented with cask types for the 100% Islay in the same way that we have for the 50 ppm barley that we buy. I think my father has been a bit more protective about that spirit that stock, because we only have a limited quantity, so we can only grow 200 tons of barley every year. And so we have a very limited stock of that. And so really, I think almost all of it has been matured in either bourbon barrels or Oloroso sherry casks. The other whiskies, the heavily peated malt that we buy in, my father has been a bit more experimental with that and is more willing to put that in wine casks and other types. He's been even more guarded with the 100% Islay spirit, and he's very particular about the cask types he chooses to mature this spirit in.
I can understand. Okay, should we go for the third one? The third one, which is George cask, and here we're changing completely because we just get now the sherry cask. It's a well. You please tell more about the sherry. It's a hogshead, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is Oloroso sherry maturation. It is a 9-year maturation in a Oloroso sherry hogshead. So a 300-litre cask. It's a big, loud whiskey, and if anyone has met my older brother George, they all know that he's big and loud. So it is. It suits his personality quite well, I think. And so it's
beautiful.
Big, dark color.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And the nose. It's actually. I was expecting it to be maybe slightly drier. This is really quite fruity.
Is it? Are you always using first fill cask, first fill Oloroso?
Well, not always, but we only buy first fill Oloroso cask. We don't buy. We are reusing the cask that we're emptying. So after this cask was emptied and bottled, we would have refilled that. But we do not buy refilled casks.
Okay.
So, it's quite hard to manage the Oloroso hogsheads in particular, because they can be quite volatile. Oloroso is quite a distinct character to marry with the whiskey, and these 300-litre casks, they're big casks, but in comparison to the more normal 500-litre Oloroso butts, there's that much more surface area, and so the whiskey can mature very, very sort of quickly, and you can lose balance quite easily with the sherry hogshead. This is delicious.
Yes, indeed. It's not lot of citrus, lot of sultanas. Wow.
and you get the real sort of spiciness, you know, cinnamon, festive spices, you know, on the palate. You don't get the same like silky smooth finish as with bourbon barrel maturation. You get a real intensity right up front on the palate.
That's incredible. That's so spicy, and here again the smokiness is very. It's just how we can say at the back, you know. And here again, like the road for all the fruity savor and that spicy. That's incredible.
Yeah, you get a real. It's not too obvious, but you get a slight savory note as well with the sherry casks. You get a sort of barbecued meat kind of savory side to these.
Some chocolate, dark chocolate also.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's with a sherry cask. You know, I think with the bourbon, you kind of get these things coming in waves, and it's a bit easier to process. With the sherry, it just comes all hits you all at once, and then you're taken aback. But then, you know, as you go back to it, I think maybe as you add a bit of water, you know, you can draw these flavors out. But with the Oloroso sherry, it kind of all happens this one big explosion on the palate.
Yeah, right. That's right.
It's a bit like my brother when he walks into a room. He's just shouting and yelling, and he's got a and an even louder laugh. So this is my brother in a glass.
So that's what I talked previously. That this one can reflect perfectly the character of your brother, of
Yeah, maybe my brother, and also a little bit of my father. I think maybe the whiskey he chose is far too kind of. Well, it's not delicate, but you know, it's too refined. He's a bit more of a brute.
Wow, that's incredible.
If you enjoy Islay whiskies, you enjoy sherry matured whiskies. You know, this is going to tick the boxes because it's. I don't like to describe whiskies or Kilchoman whiskies as like a sherry bomb because it almost implies that it's lacking balance. But this is it's got the real big distinctive sherry influence, but it still has that kind of light, not quite citrusy sweetness here, but it has that lighter side which helps to offset the big sherry influence.
That's right. Oh, beautiful.
And this is also 56.5.
Yeah. Here again, but I think it's one of your constant qualities that just to handle the strength of the alcohol, you know, and you never. Here again, the alcohol is just at the service of enhancing flavor and savor, not burning your palate and your tongue and.
I don't think whenever you taste this, whenever you nose it, the alcohol doesn't come into you don't think, oh wow, you know, the alcohol doesn't come down your nose. It doesn't overpower the palate. It is, as you say, enhancing and pushing the flavor forward.
That's beautiful. Wow. Okay. Let's go for the first one, the six-year-old port cask.
So this is a bit of an interesting one. Yeah.
Peter, and the color is beautiful, like a rosé from France.
Yeah. Peter is maybe the more flamboyant brother, so you know he's always wearing more sort of bright-colored clothing, and so no surprise that it is such a bright color in the glass.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And port Kilchoman and port maturation is something that people have always seemed to have really enjoyed. We typically use ruby port casks. We used them the first time that we did a port maturation. It worked extremely well, and so most of the port casks we're filling tend to be ruby port. I think it allows for maybe a slightly more subtle marriage of the flavors.
Wow.
Lots of red fruits.
Right.
it's actually quite earthy on the nose, you know. Even though you have that fruitiness. Sometimes with the port cask maturation, you get the sort of strawberries and cream kind of.
Yeah, right.
Character.
This is not only the case here.
Yeah, and actually on the nose, I was thinking there are some sort of rough edges to it, but on the palate, it's very nicely, very nice combination of flavors. The red fruits will really come through, the strawberries, raspberries, you know, the berries, all of those, that mix of fruity flavor with a slight tobacco sweetness for me.
Right, but here the peach is very shy.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't tell you why that is necessarily. You know, this would be this is the heavier peating level. So this is 50 ppm. Yes, there's very, very little smoke.
Yeah, right. Wow. And the nose looks like like a kind of sparkling, you know, a kind of acidity, but a nice acidity, not the bad one, you know, that's almost sparkling, like it's pressing the fruit in your hand and then going exploding. But wow,
it's interesting. We've filled lots of different cask types over the years, and very few of them don't work. You know, I think Kilchoman has such a grounding with the peat smoke, and also, you know, the cleanness of the spirit, that so long as you time the bottling right, you know, you're going to have a very nice balance. I can't think of any cask types that we've had where the character has overtaken the whiskey to such an extent that we can't make it work. And port maturation is one that we will continue to do, because people seem to really, really enjoy it. For me, it's very interesting. I think it's a unique style, and you very much get the port influence in the whiskey. So, you know, it's not just a case of us putting port on the label to try and get people interested. You know, you absolutely get the port coming through.
Yes, you can guess it. But what is important also in another hand, James, is that sometimes, you know, here again, the personality of the previous alcohol overwhelms the whiskey. But here the port is just a perfect marriage with Kilchoman spirit, and as you said, big influence from the port. We can guess it, but never at any time the port overwhelms the character of Kilchoman. That's here again beautiful balance. I have some. That's strange, because now I have some sherry vinegar, but you know, the delicate one, sherry vinegar aromas with still the red fruits, and wow. I hope that the people who are following us and doing this tasting get the same pleasure that I get and you get, because it's just wonderful. It's just beautiful range.
Yeah, I mean, with Kilchoman, we're not trying to create whiskies that are at opposite ends of the whiskey spectrum. You know, we don't have super heavily peated, we don't have completely unpeated. You know, they all are within a kind of certain area within style. You know, it's quite focused. So I think it's even given that you have a huge spectrum of flavor here, just within maybe 6 or 8 years in terms of the oldest to the youngest. And yeah, you know, even though the peating levels are quite similar, you have huge range in flavor. And for us, that's important. We want people to always have a certain knowledge or expectation when they go to get a bottle of Kilchoman. You know, they know that it's going to be taste a certain way and maybe accented by a certain cask type. But we feel that consistency is important.
And do you think that because it's from the beginning, the special character, fruity character from Kilchoman allow that Kilchoman match very well with this kind of maturation, of wine maturation. We had, I remember the beautiful example from Southern Cask also. Do you think that the fruity character from the beginning of Kilchoman spirit helps to fit with this kind of casks?
I think the fact that what you have with Kilchoman is the citrus sweetness. And so the citrus is often complemented by the other types of fruits in the cask that we select. So, you know, maybe with the tropical fruits of a bourbon barrel, or the dried fruits of a sherry cask, or the red fruits of the port cask. You know, that it's that citrus sweetness which helps offset that. You know, it's not like we have a spirit which is maybe very earthy, and then we've got peaty, earthy character. We're using a second fill cask, which maybe adds to that. We're always trying to offset characters with complement character with other characters. So I think that's my impression.
Yeah, I think you're right. Wow, it's beautiful, really beautiful.
And the color immediately catches the eye.
Wow.
Always with the forecast, you know, the color.
You know, maybe I will make some joke, you know, about pouring it in the rosé wine bottle and putting it in the fridge, and then say, hey, do you want a special rosé? And because it's just incredible, yes. A smoky rosé.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a 6-year-old whiskey. You know, it's not an old whiskey. And I think with the port casks, often bottling them slightly younger helps, because you have a real fresh vibrancy to them, which I think it works very nicely with that maturation with the port casks. So bottling them young seems to really work. And the first port bottling we did release was a 3-year-old, and that really, people seem to go crazy for that. And this is probably the oldest port cask that we've maybe released at 6 years old.
I'm sorry, James, do you have some, so this is the oldest one with port cask, but do you have actually sleeping in your warehouse some older port cask, some older whiskey aging in port cask?
I believe so, yeah, we do. So we won't bottle all of the port casks. We'll allow some of them to mature on, and we will see how they develop. Sometimes, you know, you have to be careful not to leave it too long.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah. If anyone comes to Ireland and you're in the warehouse with me, we can dig out an old port cask. So this is a cask that I selected. This is my selection, and this is a 100% Islay spirit. So it is the same spirit as the second one we tasted, my mother's cask. However, this is matured in a Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. So sweet sherry and the lighter of our spirits. So the reason I chose this is because it's so different from the whiskies that we release normally, and lots and lots of Pedro Jimenez sweetness on the nose. You get a bit of the fruitiness that you associate with sherry maturation, but the sweetness is the really thing that distinguishes this from the others. And with the PX at car strength, you know, the strength here is 58.7%. So it's maybe the highest strength, I believe, of all of the whiskies in the lineup. But the strength is the most subdued here. You know, the PX dampens it down. So it's a very, very dangerous whiskey to be drinking, because it's fruity. It's got a lot of sweetness to it, and you could drink this without even thinking. The glass, but then also the bottle will soon follow. So yeah, lots of sweetness, lots of fruitiness, and you know, quite different from the other whiskies that we tend to release. And as I was saying to Salvatore earlier, it's rare that we mature our 100% Islay spirit, the spirit that we make from our own barley. It's rare that we mature that in anything other than sherry cask. Sorry, anything other than a bourbon barrel. And if we don't mature it in a bourbon barrel, we tend to mature it in Oloroso sherry. So this is quite a rare bottling because it's 100% Islay and it's only matured in the peat sherry. So for the full 5 years, it's only spent maturation time in the Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. And I believe Salvatore is still having some problems, but he's still drinking his whiskeys, so he's having a good time. But yeah, this is beautiful, fruity style of Kilchoman. And, you know, the peat smoke still comes through, so you still get that Islay whiskey kind of grounding, but lots of fruitiness, lots of sweetness. And this being 5 years old, this would have been the concerto barley that we bottled for this, or sorry, that we harvested. So, as I was saying, the concerto is probably the barley variety that we've grown, which is perhaps the most fruity. And you know, when I say fruity, I mean citrus fruitiness, and that really helps offset the syrupy sweetness of the Pedro Jimenez cask. So, yeah, delicious. And these casks come from a producer in Spain called Miguel Martin. He is the guy that we've worked with for many years. He is the supplier of sherry casks to us, as well as the likes of Glenfarclas and other sherry producers. Sherry cask whiskey distillers that are famous for sherry cask manufacturing. And he supplies the Oloroso casks, Pedro Jimenez. We've just done a sherry matured as well, which is being released in a couple of weeks. And so he supplied those casks as well. And he is the key thing for us is that his casks are incredibly consistent. So sometimes it's hard to get consistency with sherry cask supply because of the nature of sherry being, you know, not being as popular as the casks that they produce. So sometimes it's hard to get a good quality sherry cask supplier, but with Miguel, he really he has fantastic casks and has done since day one. So we've only ever dealt with Miguel when it comes to sherry casks. And I think we will continue. So I don't know how Salvatore is going on. I think the headphones are going on. Can you hear me?
Yes. Wait, it's okay. Oh, this is such a frustration.
I was running out of things to say there for a while, so
that's okay. I can hear you now. So okay, but well, you know, in France we used to say chaque chose a une fin. I mean, each good things, nice things have to end. So please, James, can you conclude it? Can you last word for all the viewers and all the tasters from Kilchoman?
I don't know who heard me or what I'm repeating.
No, everybody except me. But now I can hear you.
Okay, so I was saying that I chose this cask because it's maybe the most different in terms of it's 100% Islay in terms of the spirit, so it's lightly peated, and it's matured only in a Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. So it's very rare that we mature the 100% Islay spirit in anything other than a bourbon barrel. And if it's not a bourbon barrel, it tends to be an Oloroso sherry butt. So this is very rare. It's quite different. We only have about probably 10 of these casks in the warehouse. So I thought it was a nice opportunity to show something that is quite different. And I was saying that the PX sweetness is maybe the dominating factor, but it doesn't overtake all of the other character.
I agree.
And even though this is the strongest, 58, 50, almost 59%, it almost is the most subdued in terms of strength. So I was saying it's very dangerous. You can bottle and then the glass and then the bottle without even thinking.
That's so charming. And that, well, I confirm what I told you, and not because you are here, James, but, well, I think it's my favorite from the range. I love them all, but if I have to choose one, congratulations, this one will be my favorite.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think I was going to say something about, you know, my brothers have no taste, but, you know, I enjoyed, I think the great thing about these whiskies are that you almost have the parents and the children, you know. My mother's and father's casks are they're older, they're a little bit more thinking more long term. You know, they will continue to develop and be excellent in a couple of years' time, maybe even better if you let them start.
Surely.
Whereas these feisty three that we tasted last, you know, you've got the big distinct sherry, you've got the real fruity port, and then you've got lots of sweetness with a PX. So I think you've got the parents and the children. Yes,
that's what we say. So what we these bottlings will be available from now in our website whiskey.fr, and from the 1st of October all the spirit retailer will get it. So and I think I will be very happy to get it, and I hope all our French Hyla lovers will appreciate it as we do, James. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your availability. Thanks for your time. And well, I think Kilchoman is more than ever one of the distilleries of the future. And I really said it frankly. I'm very sincere. I hope the people will agree. Merci à James de sa disponibilité, de cette superbe dégustation. J'espère que tout le monde l'aura apprécié autant que moi je l'ai apprécié. I think people will surely appreciate it.